My brother left my teenage daughter stranded 1,200 miles from home just to prove a point. Before I tell you how I systematically dismantled his life and cut him off from the family fortune, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. You know that feeling when you finish a marathon? That specific kind of exhaustion that settles deep in your bones? That was me on a Thursday night. I had just wrapped up a 10-hour craniotomy. 10 hours of standing under bright lights, staring through a microscope, holding someone's life in my hands. My hands were steady, they always are, but my mind was mush. I drove home in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound I could tolerate. I walked into my empty house, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the picture on the mantel. It was Sarah and me, my daughter, my world. She was 16 in that photo, taken just 2 weeks ago before she left for Europe. She looked radiant, standing next to my brother Mike and his wife, Melissa. I felt a pang of missing her, but also a sense of relief. I had paid $20,000 for that trip. 20 grand so my brother, who's been finding himself for the last decade, could have a luxury vacation, and so Sarah could see Rome and Paris. I thought I was being a good brother. I thought I was being a good father. I was an idiot. I collapsed into bed at 1 a.m. I was out cold within seconds. The phone rang at 2:13 a.m. I know the exact time because those red digital numbers are burned into my retinas. As a neurosurgeon, I'm trained to wake up instantly. When the phone rings at night, it means someone is dying. I snatched it off the nightstand. "Dr. Morgan," I said, my voice thick but alert. There was silence on the other end. Then, a sound that stopped my heart. A ragged, desperate gasp for air. "Dad." It was Sarah. But she didn't sound like herself. She sounded small, broken. "Sarah? Honey, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I sat up, the sheets tangling around my legs. My pulse spiked. "Dad, I don't know where I am." Her voice cracked, dissolving into sobbing. "They left me. They just left me." My blood ran cold. "Who left you? Where are Mike and Melissa?" "They drove away." Melissa took my phone. She said I was being disrespectful because I wouldn't carry her bags. She said I had to find my own way back to the hotel to learn a lesson. She was hyperventilating now. "I borrowed this phone from a lady. Dad, the hotel is in Florence. I'm at the airport in Rome. That's really far, isn't it?" I closed my eyes, forcing my brain to switch gears. Panic was useless. Rage was useless. Not yet. I needed to be a surgeon. Assess the damage. Stop the bleeding. Stabilize the patient. "Sarah, listen to me," I said, my voice dropping into that calm, commanding register I use in the ER. "I need you to take a deep breath. Right now. Do it." I heard her inhale, a shaky, rattling sound. "Okay, you are at Fiumicino Airport. Are you safe? Are you inside?" "Yes, I'm near the information desk. It's closed. There's nobody here, Dad. It's so dark." "You are not alone. I am right here. Keep the phone to your ear. Do not hang up." "Is the lady who lent you the phone there?" "Yes, she's looking at me." "Put her on, please." A moment later, a heavily accented voice came on the line. "Hello? Sir? Ma'am, this is Dr. David Morgan. That is my daughter. I need you to do me the greatest favor of your life. Do not leave her side. I will transfer 500 euros to your account right now if you just stay with her until my people get there. Please." "No money," the woman said, sounding offended but kind. "I am a mother. I stay. She is safe with me. Her name is Sarah." "Yes, Sarah. Thank you. God, thank you." I got back on with Sarah. "Baby, I'm going to make some calls. I have a friend, Julian. You remember Uncle Julian? He has contacts in Rome. I'm getting a private security team to you. They will be there in 20 minutes. They will have a picture of you. They will use a code word. The code word is blueberry. Don't go with anyone unless they say blueberry. Do you understand?" "Yes, Dad. Blueberry. I am booking the next flight out. I am coming to get you." You're coming. The hope in her voice broke me. I am already packing, Sarah. I will be there before you know it. Hang tight. I love you. I hung up and immediately dialed Julian. Julian isn't just a lawyer. He's the kind of guy who knows people who know people. He picked up on the second ring. David? It's 2 a.m. Did the hospital burn down? Mike and Melissa abandoned Sarah at Fiumicino. She has no money, no passport, and no phone. I need an extraction team. Now. I heard the rustling of sheets and the thud of feet hitting the floor. Say that again. They did what? They left her, Julian. To teach her respect. I need her secured. Done. I'm calling the firm in Rome. Text me her location. David? Are you okay? No, I said, walking into my closet and pulling out a suitcase. I am very far from okay. I threw clothes into the bag without looking. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from a rage so pure, so white-hot. It felt like I had swallowed a star. My brother, my own flesh and blood, the golden child my parents had worshipped, the man I had supported, bailed out, and defended for 39 years. He didn't just make a mistake. He endangered my child. I booked a ticket on the next flight out of JFK, a first-class seat that cost more than Mike's car. I didn't care about the money. I cared about speed. As I drove to the airport, the reality of the situation started to sink in. Sarah is 16. She's smart, but she's sheltered. She's grown up in the suburbs, driven to school, protected. Rome at night isn't a playground. Human trafficking, theft, assault, the scenarios playing in my head were enough to make me vomit. I called my parents. I knew I shouldn't, but I needed to know if they knew. David. My mother's voice was groggy. Is everything all right? Where is Mike? I asked. Mike? He's in Italy, dear. You know that. They're having such a wonderful time. Melissa posted a picture of a gelato just an hour ago. Why? Picture of gelato. While my daughter was crying in a terminal. Mom, did Mike call you tonight? No. David, you're scaring me. What's going on? Nothing. I lied. Go back to sleep. I hung up. They didn't know. Or maybe they did and they were already spinning the narrative. That was the family dynamic, wasn't it? Mike messes up, Mom and Dad cover it up, and David fixes it. That was the script. I looked at the speedometer. I was doing 90. I remembered when we were kids. Mike broke the neighbor's window with a baseball. He ran home crying. When the neighbor came over, my father looked at me. I was 12. Mike was 8. David, my father had said, you should have been watching him. You're the older brother. Take responsibility. And I did. I mowed the neighbor's lawn for a month to pay for it. Mike got ice cream because he was traumatized by the yelling. That was the pattern, the inheritance of the eldest son. Responsibility without authority. Burden without gratitude. But this wasn't a broken window. This was my daughter. I parked the car in the long-term lot and ran to the terminal. I bypassed the security line with my TSA pre-check, my eyes scanning every face, paranoid that somehow Mike would be there, laughing. I boarded the plane. I declined the champagne. I declined the meal. I sat in the dark, staring at the flight map on the screen. The little plane icon moved agonizingly slow across the Atlantic. I opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account. I needed to see the transactions. I had given Sarah a credit card for emergencies. Melissa had held onto it for safekeeping. I scrolled through the recent charges. Prada Rome, $3,200. Gucci Florence, $4,500. Hotel de Russie Spa Services, $800. My jaw tightened. They were bleeding me dry. They were using my money to live like royalty while treating the person I sent them to protect like garbage. But then I saw something that made me pause. Delta Airlines, refund processed, $1,200. Delta Airlines seat upgrade, Mike Morgan, $600. Delta Airlines seat upgrade, Melissa Morgan, $600. They hadn't just left her. They had canceled her return ticket. They cashed it in. They used the money to upgrade their own seats for the flight home. This wasn't an impulse decision to leave her at the airport. This was premeditated. They had planned to strand her. They had planned to erase her from the trip so they could enjoy the luxury without the burden of a teenager. I closed the laptop. I felt a calm settle over me. It was the same calm I feel when I scrub in for surgery. The emotion was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was precision. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a prosecutor building a case. I was a surgeon preparing to cut out a tumor. And Mike? He wasn't my brother anymore. He was the cancer. The flight attendant walked by. "Dr. Morgan? Can I get you anything?" I looked up at her. Coffee, black, and a pen. I had 8 hours before I landed. I was gonna write down everything. Every slight, every dollar, every betrayal. By the time I landed in Rome, I wouldn't just be ready to pick up my daughter. I would be ready to go to war. The flight to Rome was a blur of turbulence and dark thoughts. I spent the time constructing a timeline. It's what doctors do. We look at the patient history to understand the pathology. The pathology of my family was simple. Mike could do no wrong, and David could do no right, only better. I remembered the day my wife, Sarah's mother, died. It was a car accident. Sudden. Brutal. I was a resident then, working 80-hour weeks. I was broken. At the funeral, my mother hugged me. Felt stiff. Then she looked at Mike, who was crying loudly. Louder than me, louder than Sarah, who was 5 years old and clutching my leg. "Oh, poor Mike," my mother had cooed. "He's so sensitive. He feels things so deeply. David, go get your brother a tissue. He's distraught." I was the widower, but Mike was the victim. That was the moment the crack in my heart started to calcify. I focused on Sarah. I focused on my career. I built a fortress of success and money around us so we would never need anyone. But biology is a trap. You crave connection. So when Mike married Melissa, a woman who smiled too much and blinked too little, I tried. I really tried. I paid for the wedding. I paid for the honeymoon. I paid for the down payment on their house, which was technically an investment property in my name, though they lived there rent-free. "It's for family," my dad had said. "You have so much, David. Don't be greedy." Greedy. That word echoed in my head as the plane touched down in Rome. I bypassed customs with the help of the consulate liaison Julian had arranged. Car was waiting. We tore through the Italian traffic toward the safe house where the security team had taken Sarah. When I walked into that room, everything else vanished. Sarah was sitting on a sofa, wrapped in a blanket that wasn't ours. She looked tiny. Her eyes were red and swollen, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. She was holding a cup of tea with both hands, shaking. "Sarah," I breathed. She looked up. The moment she saw me, her face crumbled. "Daddy." She launched herself at me. I caught her, burying my face in her hair. She smelled like airport soap and fear. I held her tighter than I've ever held anything in my life. I checked her over. No broken bones, no visible bruises. But the psychological damage was radiating off her. "I'm here," I whispered into her hair. "I'm here. You're safe. Nobody is ever going to leave you again." We sat there for an hour. I just let her cry until there were no tears left. Then I needed the truth. "Tell me everything," I said gently. "Start from the beginning." Sarah took a shaky breath. It was okay at first. But Melissa was always angry. She said I walked too slow. She said I was ungrateful because I didn't want to pose for her Instagram photos. Go on. Yesterday, we were packing to leave Florence. Melissa bought these huge leather bags. Like, 4 of them. She told me I had to carry 2. "Dad, they were so heavy." I told her my shoulder hurt. She snapped. She started screaming that I was a spoiled princess who never worked a day in her life. I rubbed her back. My jaw clenched. Then we got to the airport. Mike went to return the rental car. Melissa took my phone. She said, "If you want to act like a child, you don't get adult privileges." She told me to sit on a bench outside the terminal while she went to check the bags. She said, "Think about your attitude." I waited, Dad. I waited for 2 hours. Then I went inside to find them. She paused, her voice trembling. I went to the check-in desk. The lady there, she looked up my name. She said my reservation was canceled. She said Mike and Melissa Morgan had already boarded. They boarded? I repeated, my voice flat. Yes, and the lady said something else. She said my luggage was checked in under Melissa's name. My suitcase, Dad. The big pink one you bought me. My eyes narrowed. Why would she check your bag if you weren't on the flight? I don't know. But before we left the hotel, Melissa made me take all my clothes out. She put them in plastic bags. She filled my suitcase with her new purses, the ones she bought. She said she didn't want to pay for extra baggage fees, so she was using my allowance. The pieces clicked into place. The twist I hadn't seen coming. Melissa wasn't just mean. She was a criminal. Italy has strict limits on exporting luxury goods without declaring them and paying VAT, value-added tax. If you buy $20,000 worth of leather goods, you have to declare it. Unless you claim they are personal items of a traveling companion. Or unless you mule them through in a suitcase that technically belongs to a minor. She was using my daughter as a drug mule, but for Prada and Gucci. And when Sarah became difficult, or perhaps, when Melissa realized it was safer to check the bag herself and claim Sarah missed the flight, she cut her loose. "Did you sign anything?" I asked. "Did Melissa make you sign any forms for the VAT refund?" "Yeah," Sarah sniffled. "She gave me a bunch of papers at the store. She said it was for insurance, fraud, tax evasion, child endangerment, theft." I looked at my daughter. She wasn't just abandoned. She was used. She was a prop in their grift. "Okay," I said, standing up. "We're going home. But first, we're going to the police station here to file a report for the stolen passport and phone. I want a paper trail in Italian." I took her shopping first. I bought her new clothes, a new phone, and the biggest gelato in Rome. I wanted to see her smile. I got a weak one, but it was enough. On the flight back to New York, Sarah slept with her head on my shoulder. I didn't sleep. I was busy. I opened a new document on my laptop. I titled it Operation Accountability. I started listing the assets. I own the house Mike lives in. I pay the lease on his car. I pay for his health insurance. I pay for his business loans for startups that never start. I texted my mother again. "Mom just landed," picking up Sarah. "Is Mike back?" Her reply came instantly. "Yes, they just got in. They're so tired, poor things. Flight was delayed." They said Sarah decided to stay in Europe for a summer exchange program? David, you spoil that girl. Letting her run wild in Italy at 16? I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. They had lied to my parents. They told them Sarah chose to stay. And my parents believed it. Why? Because it fit their narrative. Sarah is the spoiled daughter of the rich doctor. Mike is the victim of travel delays. A summer exchange program, I whispered to myself. I didn't correct her. Not yet. Interesting, I typed back. I'll ask her about it when I see her. I looked down at Sarah. She was twitching in her sleep, a nightmare chasing her. I gently moved a strand of hair from her face. They're going to pay, Sarah, I vowed silently. They're going to pay for every tear, every minute you sat on that bench. I landed in JFK with a plan. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to punch Mike, though God knows I wanted to. I was going to destroy them legally, financially, and socially. I called Sophie. Sophie is my second cousin, a shark of a family lawyer who hates Mike almost as much as I do now. "Sophie," I said as the plane taxied, "I need you to open a file. Custody, fraud, and a civil suit for emotional distress. Also, look into eviction laws for family members without a lease." "David," Sophie sounded awake. "What did they do?" "They left Sarah in Rome, and they stole my money, and they lied to Mom and Dad. I'm coming over, she said. Bring the coffee. No, I said. Bring the war paint. We drove home. The house was quiet, safe. Sarah went straight to her room. I stood in the hallway, listening to the silence. Felt different now. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence before a storm. I checked my phone. A notification from Instagram. Melissa had tagged me in a photo. It was her and Mike, clinking champagne glasses in business class. The caption read, "Cheers to family. Sad our niece couldn't handle the culture, but we're making the best of it. Hashtag blessed, hashtag Rome, hashtag love." I screenshotted it. "Enjoy the champagne, Melissa," I muttered. "It's the last thing you'll ever drink on my dime." For the next 3 days, I imposed a total media blackout on our house. I told Sarah to deactivate her social media temporarily. "Tell your friends you lost your phone," I instructed. "Do not post that you are home. Do not answer calls from grandma or grandpa. We are ghosts." Sarah, traumatized and trusting me implicitly, obeyed. She spent the days in her room, reading or watching movies. I took time off work, family emergency, and turned my home office into a war room. The silence from our end must have been confusing for them. Usually, if Sarah had stayed behind for a program, there would be coordination, paperwork, money transfers, but I gave them nothing. I let them sit in their lie. I knew Mike's psychology. He's weak. He needs validation. When he lies, he needs people to believe him immediately. If there's silence, he gets paranoid. Sure enough, on day 2, the text started. "Mike, hey bro, you get my text about the car? Needs an oil change." Mike, "Sarah call you? She's loving the program, right?" Melissa, "David, we have some of Sarah's dirty laundry she left behind. Want us to drop it off?" Dirty laundry. The audacity. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on the financials. I pulled the credit card statements again. The spending was obscene. But it was the nature of the spending that caught my eye. They hadn't just bought bags. They had bought jewelry, men's watches, Rolex, Breitling, items that retain value, items that can be resold easily. This wasn't just a vacation splurge. They were liquidating my credit limit. They were turning my credit into cash they could hide. Why? I hired a private investigator, a guy named Russo whom I'd used for background checks on staff before. "Russo," I said, handing him a file on Mike and Melissa. "Find out why they need money. Deep dive. Gambling? Drugs? Loan sharks. I'll have it in 48 hours, Russo promised. While I waited, the emotional toll on Sarah began to manifest. She wouldn't leave the house. She flinched when the doorbell rang. "I keep thinking they're coming back," she told me over dinner. "I keep hearing Melissa's voice telling me I'm worthless." "You are not worthless," I said, gripping her hand. "You are the most valuable thing in this world. And Melissa is a projection of her own insecurity. She hates you because you are everything she isn't. You're young, you're smart, and you're kind." "She said Mom would be ashamed of me," Sarah whispered. That broke me. The fork in my hand bent under the pressure of my grip. "She said what?" "She said Mom died to get away from me." I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the dark street. That wasn't just cruelty. That was spiritual murder. Melissa had crossed a line that leads to a place of no return. "Sarah?" I said, turning back, my voice terrifyingly calm. "I want you to write that down. I want you to write down every single thing she said to you. Can you do that for me?" "Why?" "Because," I said, "words have consequences." Russo came back on Friday. He sat in my kitchen, looking grim. "You were right to be suspicious, Doc," he said, sliding a folder across the island. "Your brother is drowning." I opened the file. It was a disaster. Mike had leveraged the house, my house which I let him live in, to take out illegal secondary loans. He forged my signature. He owed $50,000 to a private lender, Reed Loan Shark, in Jersey. Melissa had maxed out 6 credit cards in her own name. They were facing bankruptcy, and the sharks were circling. The trip, Russo explained, pointing to the photos of the luxury goods. It wasn't a vacation. It was a smuggling run. They buy the goods in Europe on your card, avoid the VAT, smuggle them back, sell them here for cash to pay the shark. It's a classic fence operation. And Sarah? I asked. She was the mule, or the cover. A family trip looks less suspicious to customs than a couple with 10 suitcases. But when she wouldn't play ball or when they realized they needed more space for the goods, they cut the dead weight. I felt sick. My brother sold my daughter for a Rolex. There's more, Russo said. Your parents. I looked up. What about them? They co-signed one of Mike's loans. The legal one. They know he's in trouble. They don't know about the shark, but they know he's broke. That's why they pushed you to pay for the trip. They thought if Mike could flip some goods, he could pay off the bank. My parents were in on the grift. Maybe not the abandonment, but the theft. They viewed me as the family bank, a bottomless resource to be harvested to save their golden child. My phone rang. It was Mike. Hey, Dave. His voice was shaky. We haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? We're having the usual Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's. You coming? I looked at the file. I looked at Sarah, who was watching me from the living room. Yeah, Mike, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I'll be there. Sarah's still in Europe, obviously, but I have some souvenirs I want to show you. Great. Mike sounded relieved. Hey, bring the checkbook? Mom said you might help with some house repairs. Don't worry, I said. I'm bringing everything you deserve. I hung up. Sarah, I called out. She came into the kitchen. Sunday night, I said. I'm going to Grandma and Grandpa's. Do I have to go? Panic flared in her eyes. No, you are going to stay here with Sophie. But I need you to be brave. I need you to record a video statement. Just tell the camera what happened. Can you do that? Will they see it? Oh yes. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. They're going to see it. And then, they're never going to see us again. The storm was gathering, and I was about to bring the lightning. Saturday was preparation day. I woke up with a clarity that usually only comes after a double espresso. I felt light, dangerous. I spent the morning with Sophie. She's a brilliant lawyer, ruthless in court but soft-hearted with family. She sat at my dining table, reviewing the evidence Russo and I had compiled. This is a slam dunk for custody of the assets, Sophie said, tapping a pen on the table. The forgery on the house documents? That's a felony. The credit card fraud? Felony. Child endangerment? That's prison time, David. I don't just want them in prison, I said, pouring coffee. I want them exposed. I want Mom and Dad to see exactly who they've been protecting. Sophie looked at me over her glasses. You know this will destroy your relationship with your parents, right? There's no coming back from this. The relationship ended the moment they decided my daughter was collateral damage for Mike's debts, I replied. They didn't just enable him, Sophie. They weaponized him. We spent the afternoon drafting legal notices. Eviction notice for Mike and Melissa, 30 days, as per state law, though I hoped to accelerate it. A restraining order protecting Sarah from all four of them, and a civil lawsuit for the $20,000 theft plus damages. Then came the hardest part, the video. I set up a tripod in the living room. Sarah sat on the couch. She wore a simple gray sweater, no makeup. She looked exactly like what she was, a child who had been hurt. Just talk to me, honey, I said, standing behind the camera. Pretend I'm the only one in the room. Sarah took a deep breath. She started shaky, recounting the trip. But as she got to the airport, her voice gained strength. She described the fear, the cold, the way Melissa laughed when she took the phone. Then she looked directly into the lens. Uncle Mike, she said, her voice trembling. You promised you'd come back. You told me to wait by the benches. I waited for 3 hours. I watched every car. Why do you hate me so much? What did I do? I stopped recording. I had to turn away to wipe my eyes. That question, what did I do, is the mantra of every abused child. And the answer is always, nothing. You did nothing wrong. That's perfect, I choked out. You did great. Sunday arrived. The atmosphere in my house was heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. I dressed carefully. A black suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. I wanted to look like an executioner. I packed my leather briefcase. Inside, the printed credit card statements, highlighted, the photos of the souvenirs, smuggled goods. Russo had snapped of Melissa wearing them around town, the forged loan documents, the flight records showing the cancellation and upgrades, an iPad preloaded with Sarah's video and the recording of my call with the airport security. I'm leaving, I told Sarah. Sophie was staying with her, armed with pizza and movies. Good luck, Dad, Sarah said. She looked scared, but there was a flicker of pride there too. Kick his ass. I grinned. Metaphorically, I drove to my parents' house. It's the house I grew up in. A nice suburban two-story. The driveway was full. Mike's leased BMW was there. My parents' sedan. I parked on the street. I didn't want to be blocked in. I walked up the path. I could hear laughter inside. They were happy. They were celebrating. Probably celebrating the successful smuggling run, thinking they had pulled one over on the dumb doctor brother. I opened the door without knocking. David! My mother's voice rang out from the dining room. You're late. We started appetizers. I walked into the dining room. The table was set with the good china. Roast beef. Wine. Mike was pouring a glass for Melissa. They looked tan and healthy. Melissa saw me and froze. For a split second, I saw terror in her eyes, but she masked it quickly with a fake smile. David, so good to see you. How's bachelor life? She giggled. Mike stood up, extending a hand. Hey bro, long time no see. Thanks for the trip, man. Ideally, Sarah should have stayed with the group. But hey, teens, right? He tried to clap my shoulder. I sidestepped him. His hand hit empty air. Sit down, Mike, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it sucked the air out of the room. David. My father frowned at the head of the table. What's with the attitude? Your brother is welcoming you. I said sit down. Mike sat. He looked at Mom, then at Melissa. The dynamic shifted instantly. They sensed the predator in the room, and for the first time they realized it was me. I placed the briefcase on the table right on top of the roast beef platter. David, the gravy. Mom shrieked. Be quiet, Mother, I said. She gasped. I had never spoken to her like that in my life. I clicked the latches of the briefcase. Click, click. The sound was like a gun being cocked. We need to talk about Sarah's exchange program, I began, looking directly at Melissa. And we need to talk about the $20,000 of illegal luxury goods currently sitting in your basement, Mike. Melissa dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor. Red wine splattered across her white dress like blood. I don't know what you're talking about, Melissa stammered, her face draining of color. Don't you? I pulled out the iPad. Let's ask the airport security logs. David, this is ridiculous. Dad stood up, his face red. You come into my house, disrespect your mother, accuse your brother, your son. I cut him off, left my daughter alone in an airport at 2 a.m. He canceled her ticket. He stole her money, and he forged my signature on a $50,000 loan against my property. I tossed the forged document onto the table. It slid across and landed in front of my father. That's your signature, Dad, as the witness. Did you witness it? Or did Mike forge yours too? Dad looked at the paper. His hands started to shake. Now, I said, opening the iPad. Let's watch a movie. I pressed play. The sound of Sarah's weeping filled the dining room. It was amplified by the Bluetooth speaker I had quietly connected to in the corner. They just left me, Dad. I'm so scared. Mike stared at the table, refusing to look at the screen. Melissa was trembling, tears of rage. Not remorse. welling in her eyes. My mother had her hand over her mouth. The video cut to Sarah's testimony. Melissa said Mom would be ashamed of me. She said I was baggage. When the video ended, the silence was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. Well, I asked, looking at Mike. Is she lying? She misunderstood. Mike stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. We were teaching her independence. She was being a brat, David. You don't know what she was like. She wouldn't listen. So you abandoned a minor in a foreign country? I asked. That's a felony, Mike. Child endangerment. It wasn't abandonment, Melissa shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. We were going to call her. We just wanted to scare her a little. She thinks she's better than us just because she has your money. And the ticket? I asked, throwing the flight records at her face. You canceled her ticket, Melissa. You cashed it in. You upgraded your seats. Was that to teach her independence? Or was it because you needed the refund to pay the import tax on the bags you were smuggling? Smuggling? Dad looked up, confused. What's smuggling? Show him the photos, David, I said to myself, but I did it. I tossed the PI's photos of the luggage. Prada, Gucci, Rolex, all undeclared, all bought with my credit card. They used Sarah's luggage allowance to mule it in, and when she refused to carry it, they ditched her. Dad looked at Mike. Is this true? Did you use the house money for purses? It's an investment, Mike yelled, finally cracking. I can flip them for double. I needed the cash, Dad. The loan sharks are going to break my legs. Loan sharks, Mom whispered. Mike, you said it was a business loan. He lied, Mom, I said coldly. He always lies, and you always believe him. David, please. Mom turned to me, tears streaming down her face. He's your brother. He's in trouble. We can fix this. You have the money. Just pay off the shark. We'll handle the rest internally. Don't ruin his life over a mistake. I stared at her. Even now, even after hearing Sarah cry, even after the fraud, she wanted me to pay. A mistake. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He left my child to die. If I hadn't answered the phone, if that woman hadn't helped her. I leaned over the table, getting right in my mother's face. You want me to pay? Okay. Here is my payment. I pulled out the eviction notice. You have 30 days to get out of my house, Mike. You and Melissa. I'm selling it. You can't do that, Mike screamed. We have rights. Where will we go? Not my problem. Maybe you can live in one of those Gucci bags. I pulled out the civil suit. And this is for the 20 grand you stole, plus damages. I'm suing you, Mike, and I'm reporting the fraud to the credit card companies. They will come for you. And the IRS? I'm sending them a tip about your import business tomorrow. David, stop, Dad shouted, standing up. You are tearing this family apart. No, Dad, I said, picking up my briefcase. I'm not tearing it apart. I'm cutting out the rot. You chose him. You always chose him, even when he hurt me. But now he hurt Sarah. And that is where I draw the line. If you do this, Dad said, his voice shaking with impotent rage, you are no son of mine. I will write you out of the will. The will? I scoffed. Dad, you have nothing. You mortgaged your house to pay for Mike's mistakes. You are broke. I've been paying your property taxes for 5 years. Did you forget that? He went pale. He had forgotten, or he chose to forget. I don't want your money, I said, and I don't want your name. Keep Mike. You deserve each other. I turned to walk out. David, Melissa screamed. You think you're perfect? You think you're God because you're a doctor? Sarah is going to grow up to be a bitch just like. I spun around. Finish that sentence, I dared her. Finish it, and I will add a defamation suit to the pile that will make your head spin. She closed her mouth, seething. I walked out the front door. The cool night air hit my face. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I got in my car. I didn't look back. I drove home to my daughter, to my real family. The adrenaline crash hit me about an hour after I got home. I sat on the kitchen floor, tie undone, staring at the fridge. Sophie found me there. "Did you do it?" she asked. "I burned it all down," I said. "The bridge is gone. It's ashes." "Good." Sophie handed me a beer. "Now the real work begins." The fallout was immediate and nuclear. By Monday morning, my phone was exploding. Uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were calling me. Mom had been busy. The narrative she spun was incredible. Apparently, I had abandoned the family in their time of need, kicked my struggling brother onto the streets, and brainwashed Sarah to lie about the trip. "David, how could you?" My Aunt Linda left a voicemail. "Mike says you hit him. He says you're having a breakdown." I didn't respond. I forwarded the voicemail to Sophie. "Add it to the harassment file," I texted. Monday afternoon, the eviction notice was served. A sheriff's deputy delivered it. I wanted it official. Mike called me 40 times. I had blocked his number, but he called the hospital switchboard. I had security ban him from the premises. Tuesday, Melissa showed up at my house. I was at work, but Sarah was home with the nanny I had hired, a temporary measure, mostly for security. Sarah called me, terrified. "Dad, Melissa is banging on the door. She's screaming." I checked the Ring doorbell camera from my phone. There she was. Melissa, looking disheveled, mascara running down her face. She wasn't the arrogant woman from Sunday night. She looked desperate. "Open up, Sarah. Tell your dad to stop. We're sorry," she yelled at the camera. I spoke through the app. My voice boomed from the speaker on the porch. "Get off my property, Melissa. The police are already on their way." She jumped, looking around for the source of the voice. She stared into the camera lens. "David, please. The loan shark. They came to the house last night. They threatened Mike. You have to help us. Just give us the money, and we'll leave you alone. We'll sign whatever you want." "I don't negotiate with terrorists," I said. "And I don't help child abusers. You have 28 days left to vacate." "You heartless bastard," she screamed, kicking the door. "I hope you die alone." The police arrived 2 minutes later. I watched on the feed as they escorted her away. She wasn't arrested, just warned for trespassing. But the visual of her being put in the back of a cruiser was satisfying. Wednesday, the IRS contacted me. Russo's tip had paid off. They were auditing Mike and Melissa for the last 5 years. Apparently, the smuggling wasn't a one-time thing. They had a history of unreported income. But the biggest blow came on Friday. My father had a heart attack. I got the call from the ER. Ironically, it was my hospital. I was in the building. I ran down to the cardiac wing. Professional ethics dictated I couldn't treat him, but I was still his son. Or I used to be. I found my mother in the waiting room. She looked 10 years older than she had on Sunday. When she saw me, her eyes hardened. "Are you happy?" she spat. "This is your fault. You stressed him out. You killed him." "He's not dead, Mom," I said, checking the chart on the monitor. "He had a mild myocardial infarction. He's stable." "No thanks to you," she hissed. "Get out. We don't want you here. Mike is coming. He's the only son I have left." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw a woman so consumed by her narrative, so desperate to protect her delusion, that she would blame the son who paid her bills for the heart attack of the husband who enabled her favorite son's crimes. "Okay," I said. "I'll go." I walked to the nurse's station. "I am Dr. Morgan," I told the head nurse. "The patient in 304 is my father. However, I am removing myself as the emergency contact. All billing inquiries should be directed to his home address. I am not responsible for his care or his costs." "But Dr. Morgan," the nurse looked confused. "His insurance. It's under your family plan." "Cancel it," I said. "As of midnight tonight, he is off my policy." It was cruel. I know it was cruel. But they had tried to use his health to manipulate me again. "Look what you did to Dad." I wasn't playing that game. I walked out of the hospital. I felt lighter. The final tether was cut. When I got home, Sarah was waiting for me. She had made dinner. Spaghetti. It was overcooked and the sauce was from a jar, but it was the best meal I had ever seen. "I heard about Grandpa," she said quietly. "He's going to be fine," I said. "Physically. Are we bad people, Dad?" she asked. "For not helping?" I put down my fork. "Sarah," I said, "imagine you have a friend who keeps setting her house on fire. Every time she does, you run in and put it out. You get burned. You inhale smoke, but you save her. Then one day she throws your kitten into the fire, and she asks you to run in and save it. But this time you don't run into the fire. You call the fire department and you stand back. Does that make you a bad person?" "No," she said. "We are standing back," I said. "We aren't lighting the match. We aren't fanning the flames. We are just finally, after all these years, refusing to burn for them." She nodded. She understood. The war wasn't over. The court dates were coming. The eviction was looming. But the hardest part, the emotional break, was done. I was free. And for the first time in 16 years, I wasn't just Sarah's provider. I was her father. And no one was ever going to hurt her again. 3 months is a long time when you are waiting for a war to end, but it is a blink of an eye when you are watching your enemies suffocate. The silence from my end was absolute. I didn't answer the guilt-tripping letters my mother sent via FedEx because I had blocked her email. I didn't answer the late-night drunken voicemails Mike left on my office line before I had the number changed. I simply let the legal machinery do its work. Sophie was a shark. She didn't just file the civil suit. She buried them in paperwork. We requested discovery on everything. Every bank statement, every text message, every email. When you are guilty, discovery is your worst nightmare because it forces you to hand over the gun you used to shoot yourself in the foot. The court date for the civil suit, David Morgan versus Michael and Melissa Morgan, was set for a rainy Tuesday in November. It wasn't a criminal trial yet, though the IRS investigation was looming over them like a thunderhead. This was about the money, the $20,000 theft, the fraud, the emotional distress. I walked into the courthouse wearing a suit that cost more than Mike's car. Sarah wasn't with me. I refused to let her be near them. Sophie walked beside me, carrying a briefcase that contained the final nail for their coffin. When I saw them in the hallway, I almost didn't recognize my brother. Mike looked hollowed out. He had lost 20 pounds. His hair, usually gelled and perfect, was thinning and messy. He wore a suit that looked 2 sizes too big, probably because he couldn't afford a tailor anymore. Melissa was next to him, but she wasn't the defiant shrew she had been on my porch. She looked terrified. She was clutching her stomach, looking pale and fragile. My parents were there, sitting on a bench a few feet away. My father was in a wheelchair, recovering from his heart attack, which turned out to be angina brought on by stress. He looked frail, but when he saw me, his eyes burned with the same old entitlement. My mother wouldn't look at me. She was busy dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the role of the grieving matriarch. I walked past them without breaking stride. "David," Mike croaked. He sounded like a ghost. "Can we just talk? Please, before we go in there." I stopped. I didn't turn my body, just my head. "You had 39 years to talk to me like a brother, Mike. Today you talk to the judge." Inside the courtroom, the air was stale. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Reynolds who had zero patience for family drama, reviewed the files. Mike's lawyer was a court-appointed public defender because they couldn't afford a private attorney anymore. The eviction had gone through 2 weeks prior. They were currently living in my parents' basement, a humiliation that must have been eating Melissa alive. The proceedings were brutal. Sophie laid out the timeline with surgical precision. "Your Honor," Sophie said, projecting her voice clearly, "the defendants didn't just mismanage funds. They engaged in a systematic scheme of credit card fraud, identity theft, and child abandonment. We have airline records showing the cancellation of the minor's ticket. We have receipts for luxury goods totaling $24,000, purchased with the plaintiff's card, none of which were authorized. Mike's lawyer tried to argue that it was a family misunderstanding, that I had given verbal permission. Judge Reynolds looked at Mike. Mr. Morgan, do you have any proof of this verbal permission? A text? An email? He's my brother, Mike stammered. We don't sign contracts for everything. In this court we do, the judge deadpanned. Then came the testimony regarding the emotional damages. We played the video, not the one Sarah recorded for social media, but the deposition she had given a month ago. In it, she described the panic attacks, the nightmares where she wakes up screaming that she's trapped in an airport. She described how she can't look at a suitcase without shaking. I watched my parents during the video. My father was staring at his hands. My mother was shaking her head, whispering to herself, "She's lying, she's exaggerating." Even now, with the evidence screaming in her face, she couldn't accept that her golden child was a monster. But the real fireworks started when we moved to the financial settlement phase. Mike took the stand. He was sweating profusely. "I can't pay," he sobbed. "I'm bankrupt. David knows that. He's doing this just to hurt me. He has millions. Why does he need my pennies?" "It's not about the money, Mr. Morgan," Judge Reynolds said sharply. "It is about accountability." Then Melissa stood up. She hadn't been called to the stand, but she stood up anyway. "Your Honor," she shouted. "Please, we are destitute. We have nothing. And I'm pregnant." The courtroom went silent. I froze. Sophie looked at me, eyebrows raised. "I'm pregnant," Melissa repeated, turning to look at my parents. She was crying now, clutching her belly theatrically. "I'm carrying the next Morgan grandchild. If you ruin us, you ruin this baby. David is trying to kill his own niece or nephew before it's even born." My mother let out a gasp. "Oh, Melissa, is it true?" "Yes," Melissa wailed. "I didn't want to say anything because of the stress. But we need help. We need the family to come together." It was a brilliant move. Evil but brilliant. She was using a pregnancy, real or fake, to leverage my parents' desperation for legacy and to make me look like a monster for suing an expectant mother. I could see my father's face softening. The grandchild card was the ultimate trump card in our family. Mike looked shocked, then hopeful. He grabbed Melissa's hand. "We're having a baby? Babe, that's amazing." I looked at them. I looked at the performance. And then a memory surfaced. A medical file I had reviewed years ago when Mike had asked me for a referral for lower back pain. I leaned over to Sophie. "Request a sidebar." "Now." Sophie shot up. "Your Honor, may we approach the bench? New evidence has just presented itself regarding the defendant's claims." We huddled at the bench. Mike's lawyer looked confused. "Your Honor," I said quietly, keeping my voice low so the gallery couldn't hear yet. "The defendant claims to be pregnant with my brother's child to solicit leniency. However, as a medical professional who has previously consulted on my brother's medical history, I feel compelled to mention a material fact regarding paternity. And that is," Judge Reynolds asked, 6 years ago, Mike had a severe case of mumps orchitis. It resulted in testicular atrophy. I referred him to a urologist. The subsequent fertility tests showed he is completely sterile. Azoospermia. 0 sperm count. Unless a miracle occurred, he cannot father a child. The judge's eyes widened. "Do you have proof?" "It is in his medical records, which were subpoenaed as part of the discovery for the medical expenses he claimed he needed the loan for," Sophie added smoothly. She pulled a sheet of paper from her file. We hadn't planned to use it, but it was there. The judge read the paper. She looked at Mike. She looked at Melissa. "Step back," she ordered. Judge Reynolds turned to the court. "Mrs. Morgan, you claim you are pregnant with Mr. Morgan's child?" "Yes, Your Honor." Melissa beamed, squeezing Mike's hand. "A little miracle." "Mr. Morgan," the judge said, her voice ice cold, "were you aware that according to your medical records from 2018, you are medically sterile?" The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Mike's smile vanished. He blinked. "What?" "You had mumps, Mr. Morgan. The records indicate total azoospermia. You cannot have children. Mike turned to Melissa. The look on his face wasn't anger yet. It was pure confusion. Melissa? But you said. Melissa turned the color of ash. She stammered, "The doctors. They can be wrong. Miracles happen. We can order a prenatal paternity test right now." I spoke up from my table. "I'll pay for it." Melissa looked at me with pure hatred. Then she looked at Mike. And in that split second, Mike realized the truth. The golden child had been played. The woman who manipulated him into stealing from his brother, into abandoning his niece, into destroying his life. She was cheating on him. And she was trying to pass off another man's baby as his to secure an inheritance that no longer existed. "Who is it?" Mike whispered. Then he screamed. "Who is it?" He lunged at her. "Bailiff!" Judge Reynolds shouted. The bailiff tackled Mike as he tried to grab Melissa by the throat. My mother was screaming. My father was clutching his chest. It was chaos. It was tragic. And it was absolute vindication. The judge banged her gavel until order was restored. Mike was handcuffed, weeping uncontrollably on the table. Melissa was sobbing in the corner, refusing to look at anyone. "I have heard enough," Judge Reynolds said. "Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $24,000 for the theft, plus $50,000 in punitive damages. Furthermore, I am forwarding the transcript of this hearing to the district attorney regarding the fraud admissions." Case closed. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. As I walked out, I passed my parents. My mother was staring at Melissa with a look of horror. The illusion was shattered. Her perfect son was a cuckold, a thief, and a failure. Her perfect daughter-in-law was an adulteress and a liar. "David?" My father whispered as I passed. "David, wait." I didn't wait. I walked out into the rain. The air felt clean. The aftermath of the trial was a slow, grinding dissolution of everything my parents had built. Mike and Melissa didn't just divorce. They detonated. With the revelation of the affair and the baby not being his, Mike finally snapped. He testified against her in the IRS audit to save his own skin, painting her as the mastermind behind the smuggling ring. Melissa, in turn, handed over texts showing Mike knew about the fraud all along. They destroyed each other with the same ferocity they had once used to attack me. Mike ended up pleading guilty to tax evasion and fraud. He got 3 years in federal prison. The golden child was now inmate 8940. Melissa vanished. Rumor has it she moved back to her hometown in Ohio, raising the baby alone in a trailer park, working double shifts at a diner. The luxury bags were seized by the government. The high life was over. My parents were the ones who truly lingered in the wreckage. They had to sell their house, the house I grew up in, to pay off the co-signed loans and Mike's legal fees before he went inside. They downsized to a 2-bedroom condo in a retirement community. It wasn't poverty, but for people who prided themselves on status, it was a death sentence. 6 months after the trial, on a crisp spring morning, I was sitting in my backyard. Sarah was planting tomatoes in the garden. She looked healthy. Her hair had grown out, and she had gained back the weight she lost during the crisis. She was laughing at something Sophie was saying. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. "This is Dr. Morgan," I answered. "David." It was my father. His voice sounded weak, stripped of its usual boom. "What do you want, Robert?" I asked. I couldn't call him Dad anymore. Your mother and I," he paused, coughing. "We miss you. We miss Sarah. It's Easter next week. We were hoping. Maybe we could start over? We have a spare room here. Sarah could stay over." The audacity was almost impressive. After everything, after the abandonment, after the court case, after calling me a monster, they thought a few months of silence and a holiday invite could reset the clock. "Sarah isn't coming to your house," I said calmly. "Sarah is never coming to your house again. David, please. We're old. We're alone. Mike is gone. You're all we have." "I know," I said, "and that's the only reason you're calling. You don't miss me. You miss having a son you can brag about. You miss the access. You miss the safety net. That's not fair, he rasped. We made mistakes, but family forgives. I watched Sarah in the garden. She was wiping dirt off her hands, smiling at the sun. She was happy. She was safe. She had a college fund that was fully restored. She had a father who would burn the world down for her. She didn't need grandparents who saw her as collateral damage. Family protects. I corrected him. You didn't protect her. You protected your ego. You protected Mike. You made your choice, Robert. You bet on the wrong horse. And now you have to live with the empty stable. David, wait. Do not call this number again, I said. If you do, I will file for harassment. I hung up. Then I blocked the number. I walked out into the garden. Who was that? Sarah asked, shielding her eyes from the sun. Spam, I said. Just someone trying to sell me something I don't need. She smiled. Hey, look at this. The roots are taking hold. She pointed to the small tomato plant. I think this one is going to be really strong. I think so too, I said, looking at her. It has good soil now. Sarah's recovery wasn't a straight line. She had months of therapy. She had days where she cried for no reason. But she channeled that pain into something incredible. She started a blog for teens traveling alone, giving safety tips and advice on what to do in emergencies. She volunteered at a shelter for runaway youth.